Hello, welcome to another edition of YourTown television program and my segment, Artivism. I'm King Grossman, a local author, and today I'm really looking forward to the three guests that we're going to visit with, Ed Moncrief and Mark Baer and Gayla Cottrell. We've got two authors and we've got visual artists, and we're really going to explore what we do each week, each month when we have this segment. The intersection of art with social justice and how it informs art. We're going to try to really look at these intersections. And so I'm really happy to start with Ed Moncrief. And it's nice to have you here, Ed.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Good. And yes, and really looking forward to this because Ed has a debut novel out, Raising the Blackbirds, and we're going to get into that in depth. And I'm really looking forward to it. We're going to get to read from it. Ed will read from it, I believe, and we'll just really explore, because this book very much deals with the intersection of social justice in our community, and set in Salinas and the surrounding areas. So I wanted to start, because Ed's a writer out of Salinas. I wanted to start with a poem that I wrote just in the last week. You and I were both at the anti-racism rally in Salinas,
yes,
which was a great event for so many reasons. It was on a very busy street corner, a lot of exposure, a lot of support from the passersby in the cars.
Probably 50 to 70% of the people passing by were honking.
Yes.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up, honking. And it's very moving. And also, I know enough about the organizing in Salinas that it was the first time some of these various either labor groups or human rights organizations or racial justice organizations in the various skin colors got together. And so that in itself was magnificent, that it was a coming together. And so on that backdrop, I'll read my little poem, and then maybe we'll get into Raising the Blackbirds. But the name of this poem is A Rainbow of Skin Colors, Protest in Salinas. Too many silos reek of stale grain on the farm and in metropolis. The busy street corner, a coming together of scattered seeds set to native drumbeat. Bands of magenta and yellow and green feathers in children's hair swirl, as if animated by some fresh breeze, sweet mint of sage incense up our nostrils. Here, the act of breath destroys racism. And so there we have it.
Very nice.
Thank you. So let's switch over to you as a writer and Raising the Blackbirds. Tell us a little bit just about yourself as a writer and how you got to this particular story. How did you decide this was a story you were going to write as a debut novel? Why was it that important to you?
Well, I've been a writer my whole life, although I never decided to do it professionally until I retired about 7 years ago. And was a storyteller all my life, in the sense that I worked in nonprofit housing organizations throughout my career and did a lot of proposal writing, wrote newspaper articles about the organizations that I was a part of and the issues that we were concerned about. This was throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s and into the 2000s. And this particular story actually is a story of Salinas in the 70s, and the story of a farm worker immigrant who migrated to California, first to Texas out of Mexico, begins with his life as a child and in Mexico. And I've tried to present Sixto as the iconic farm labor immigrant. And I think much of his life, and obviously the lives of all of his community in this country, belies the image that we are getting nowadays.
Yes.
And is completely improper and unjust image to be saying that immigrants are a burden on society when they are providing essential labor
Yes.
to many of our industries, ag and tourism in this area being obvious examples. People do not appreciate and understand that as immigration is curtailed, they're going to watch prices going up in these industries.
Yes. Yes.
And people should be aware of that and understand why.
So there's an element of wage slavery going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are pieces of that that are terrible in terms of a history of what has been taking advantage, if you will. But on the other hand, from the side of the folks who are out there in the fields, it is an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And they come here for opportunity. And so I wanted to tell this story from all of those perspectives. I also wanted to help people understand, especially about immigrants from Mexico, the history that they bring in their very blood and in the way they see issues, the way they have to adjust when they get here, the way they try and struggle to assimilate and overcome some of the burdens of that history.
And these stigmas.
Yeah,
In these stigmas.
well, there is stigmas, but there's also burdens of psychology, the idea of trusting government, for example,
Yes.
which we do in this country for the most part. We certainly have areas of distrust and philosophies of distrust of government, but we also deep down have a trust of government in terms of it being at least one area of justice and often counter justice, but at the same time we have a constitution that is strong and that certainly lays out justice and compromise and representation from all people and equality as goals that we strive for as a country and the bedrock of democracy. So, you know, I think that we don't perhaps appreciate enough folks coming from another culture such as Mexico struggle to make connection to some of the basic realities of American life that we take for granted.
Yes.
And I wanted to be able to show that struggle.
Yes. And Raising the Blackbirds, the title itself. I mean, are blackbirds anything like black sheep?
Well, yes, I would say yes and no. It's really, you know, a blackbird is kind of a squawker. Is into everybody else's business. It can be very destructive. And at the same time has a certain majesty and certain beauty in terms of the image of a blackbird. So both threatening and beautiful in a strange way.
Yes.
So there is a Mexican dicho, and the title of the book is based on the dicho, Críen los cuervos y te sacarán los ojos. You raise the blackbirds and they pluck out your eyes. And really I wanted to have that theme because it's a story of leadership.
Okay.
It's a story of what we do to some of our leaders, and I think of Barack Obama a lot in that regard. And it is living the life of a leader. You are susceptible to being undercut by strange motivations at times.
Yes.
Jealousy and even hatred, because you're the top guy and so you become the target of a lot of people's just need for anger or need for hatred or need to have something to fear or something to point a finger at. And so the leader absorbs a lot of that.
Yes.
And Sixto Torres is the main character. He's an actual person. This is a historical literary novel, and my intention was to tell his story in a way that would bring out the themes that I saw in his life and in the community.
I would like for you to read some of the book, if you would. And then after that, let's talk about the research of actually the integrity of the historical aspect of the novel. But let's set the story.
The September breeze, I should set the story first of all. This is Sixto telling his own story, and he is in bed. He's about to leave to go to seminary. He's 13 years old and he's going off to seminary. And he's thinking about his family and his new life to come. The September breeze puffed at the window, carrying to me a vague scent from another time in my short life, the smell of rancid water. It called up the image of a distant black dot in the sky, set above the evening sun. I saw mud and broken clouds, smelled again the decaying reeds along a barren shore, the grimy water, muy lodoso. I was maybe 10, certainly no more than 10. In September, por el día 15, we stood in a circle to watch an old man weaving and wrapping los globos, watching him create the globes of wood and paper, making them in order to fly them, wood, and my friend Rafael, decimos el flaco, said a paper from China. All of us in the circle watched as the man wrapped the paper around a tiny frame made from strips of carrizo. With twisted yet delicate and dark fingers, he attached the canister of kerosene under the globe and brought forth a match to light the fluid. Cuide los zapatos, Sixto. I pressed back into the crowd around me, protecting my shoes from the threat of the flame. That morning I had dressed for the fiesta in my new school uniform, all white and pressed, with creases down the front. Mama had presented me with a pair of glossy black shoes, the first dress shoes I had ever owned. Always before I had worn old sandals or work shoes, even to school. Tenga cuidado, hijo. They are very pretty. Take care. The old man lit the kerosene. The flame shot up from the tin cup. Now in the darkness of my room, I smiled as I remembered first seeing the magic of El Globo, slowly rising with the help of only a little heat, moving away from us over the booths and the tables, past the stone tower of the church, out beyond the last houses and trees, and into El Plano. My schoolmates and I watched in amazement as it was taken higher by that same September breeze that always came in from Tampico and the sea, and that even now buffeted the window above me. Hola, muchachos, síganlo, follow it. Whoever brings back the frame, un centavo. The old man was calling to us. La armazón, un centavo. In an instant, I found myself chasing after the rising image, following it with the others, running as if enlisted in a great cause. My schoolmates on all sides, my cousins, my friends from Rio Verde. Out past the plaza, past the church, past the grove of encinas, on to the open plain. I was not a fast runner. Still, I hoped that I could be the lucky one. Perhaps the globe would drop quickly from the sky and fall right at my feet. Perhaps the others would grow tired before I wearied of the chase. As I ran, I watched the floating object grow smaller and darker above the fading light. High clouds dropped the hint of rain. We paid little notice. Our parents, alerted by the dampness and realizing our absence, must have marked the position of the sun. They found their way to the edge of the plain and strained to call us back. But we couldn't hear the summons because we were yelling at El Globo to return. We didn't feel the rain. We paid little attention to the dying sun. We saw only the drifting, darkening ball, each of us holding firm to the hope that it should be ours to retrieve. We ran for more than 2 kilometers when a few began to slow. Some of us continued into the dark neck of the Hagi Lagoon, but some turned back from its damp and spongy floor. They stood in silence, eyeing the matted shoreline that curved along the edges up to the crest of the hill. The globe seemed purposely to lead the rest of us into the lagoon's rank web of grass and tangled reeds. By the time I stopped and looked around me, only 5 or 6 of my comrades were left in the chase. We had slogged 100 meters into the mire when the dot against the sky disappeared with the sky itself. The others also paused to gather their wits. We'd better get back, they said, each of them sensing the danger. I looked down at my once white uniform and once glossy black shoes. Even through the twilight, I could see how spotted and smeared they were with the mugre of the lagoon. Too late, I removed the shoes and tied them around my neck. I rolled my pants to my knees. With only my slimy socks to cover my feet, I began the long trek back toward the town. Beyond the neck of the lagoon, we prodigals finally heard our parents' calls. Halfway across the plain, we could see the torches lit for us. I remembered, as I fell into a calm sleep, how enojado mi papa was, ready to take a brush to my backside because of the uniform and mostly because of the shoes. How glad I was that my abuelitos, my grandparents, defended me.
Lovely writing. Yes. Well, we want to know Sixto. We're out there. He's going over the edge a little bit with his buddies, and yet
chasing the globe.
Chasing the globe. What a great metaphor for where he's going to head.
Yeah.
and the juxtaposition of one shiny pair of shoes, but really living much closer to the earth. You know, I see that in that as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, there again, how do we?
While you're chasing the globe, you're in the mud.
You're in the mud.
And you're going to get dirty.
And
you're going to be frightened, and you're going to be abandoning perhaps people you love
yes.
in order to reach your dreams. There's
yes.
a lot there, which is why when Sixto told me in 2 sentences about this experience in his life, I knew that had to be the first thing in the book.
Yes, and I want us to put up the book cover, which is a wonderful piece of art itself. This book cover is a piece of art done by a mutual friend of ours. Jose Ortiz was a wonderful artist out of Salinas. It also captures the raising the blackbirds.
In the background, you see the fields of Salinas, and you also see what is a labor camp.
Yes.
And once Sixto gets to California, he actually arrives in March of 1970, and Chavez arrived in Salinas to organize the valley in August of 1970. So his timing, Sixto's timing, he had been a little bit involved with the Farm Worker Union in Texas, but only as a volunteer, really minimally. But once he got here, his timing was perfect, and he got very engaged with the union. The union story in the Salinas Valley is in and of itself a incredible story that arcs over time.
Ed?
Yes.
Believe it or not,
we're out of time.
We're out of time.
Oh my.
So I'm going to ask you to come back on the show again, if you'll do that.
Absolutely.
Tell the viewers how they can get on your website or where they can go buy this book.
You can get it on Amazon and on Goodreads, and you can buy it locally at the Steinbeck Center, Steinbeck House, and here in Monterey. You can also get it at Old Capitol
Yes.
Bookstore. You can also go on my website and send me your email, and I'll send you a signed copy.
And is it edmoncrief.com?
Yeah. Edwardmoncrief.com.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for...